Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 7, Mudbloods and Murmurers. Harry spent a lot of times over the next few days dogging out of the sight whenever he saw Gilderoy Lockhart coming down the corridor. Harder to avoid was Colin Creepy, who seemed to have memorized Harry's schedule. Nothing seemed to give Colin a bigger thrill than to say, "All right, Harry," 6 or 7 times a day, and hear, "Hello, Colin," back. However exasperated Harry sounded when he said it. Hedwig was still angry with Harry about the discussed curjonery, and Ron's wand was still manufacturing, surfacing itself on Friday morning by shooting Ron's head in charms and hitting tiny old Professor Flitwick squarely behind the eye, creating a large throbbing green boil where it had stuck. So with one thing and another, Harry was quite glad to reach the weekend. Ron and Hermione were planning to visit Hagrid on Saturday morning. Harry, however, was shaken awake several hours earlier than he would have liked by Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. "What's the matter?" said Harry groggily. "Quidditch practice," said Wood. "Come on." Harry squinted at the window. There was a thin mist hanging across the pink and gold sky. Now that he was awake, he couldn't understand how he could have slept through the racket the birds were making. "Oliver," Harry croaked. It's the crack of dawn." "Exactly," said Wood. He was a tall and bushy 6-year, and at the moment his eyes were gleaming with a crazed enthusiasm. "It's part of our new training program. Come on, grab your broom and let's go," said Wood hurriedly. None of the other team have started training yet. We're going to be the first one to mark this year." Yawning and shivering slightly, Harry climbed out of bed and tripped to find his Quidditch robes. "Good man," said Wood, "meeting on the field in 15 minutes." When he'd found his skeleton robes and pulled on his cloak for warmth, Harry scribbled a note to Ron explaining where he'd gone and went down the spiral staircase to the common room, his Nimbus 2000s on his shoulder. He had just reached the portrait hole when there was a clatter behind them, and Colin Creepy came dashing down the spiral staircase, his camera swinging madly around his neck and something clutched in his hand. "I heard someone saying your name on the stairs, Harry. Look what I've got. I've had it developed. I want to show you." Harry looked bemusedly. Photographed Colin was brandishing under his nose. A moving black and white Lockhart was tugging hard on an arm Harry recognized as his own. He had pleased to see that his photographic self was putting up a good fight and refusing to be dragged into view. As Harry watched, Lockhart gave up and slumped, panting against the white edge of the picture. "Will you sign it?" said Colin eagerly. "No," said Harry flatly, glancing around to check that the room was very deserted. "Sorry, Colin, I'm in a hurry. Quidditch practice." He climbed through the portal. "Oh, wow, wait for me. I've never watched a Quidditch game before." Colin scrambled through the hole after him. "It'll be very boring," he said quickly, but Colin ignored him, his face shining with excitement. "You were the youngest house player in 100 years, weren't you, Harry? Weren't you?" said Colin, trotting alongside him. "You must be brilliant. I've never flown. Is it easy? Is that your own broom? Is that the best one there is?" Harry didn't know how to get rid of him. He was like having an extremely talkative shadow. "I don't really understand Quidditch," said Colin breathlessly. "Is it true there are 4 balls and 2 of them flying around trying to knock people off their brooms?" "Yes," said Harry heavily, resigned to explain the complicated rules of Quidditch. "They're called bludgers. There are 2 beaters, one each team, to carry clubs to beat the bludger away from their side. Fred and George Weasley are the Gryffindor beaters." "And what are the other balls for?" Colin asked, tripping down a couple of steps because he was gazing open-mouthed at Harry. "Well, the quaffle, that is British yellow one. British red one. It's the one that scores goal. 3 chasers on each team throws the quaffle to each other and try and get it through the goalpost at the end of the pitch. There are 3 long poles with hoop on the end, and the 4th pole is the golden snitch," said Harry. "And it's very small, very fast, and difficult to catch. But that's what the Seeker's got to do, because the game of Quidditch doesn't end until the snitch has been caught. And whichever team Seeker aren't you? Whichever Seeker gets the snitch earns his team an extra 150 points. And you're the Gryffindor Seeker, aren't you?" said Colin in wow. "Yes," said Harry, and they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. "And there's the keeper too. He guards the goalposts. That's it, really." But Colin didn't stop questioning Harry all the way down to sloping lawns to the Quidditch field, and Harry only shook him off when he reached the changing rooms. Colin called after him in a peeping voice. "I'll go get a guess it, Harry," and hurried off to the stand. The rest of the Gryffindor team were already in the changing room. Wood was the only person who looked truly awake. Fred and George Weasley were sitting, puffy eyes and tousled hair, next to 4th-year Alice Bennet, who seemed to be nodding off against the wall behind her fellow chasers. Katie, Belle, and Angelina Johnson were yawning side by side opposite them. "There you are, Harry. What kept you?" said Wood briskly. "Now I want a quick talk. With you. Oh, before we actually get onto the field, because I spent the summer devising a whole new training program, which I really think will make all the difference." Wooded, holding up a large diagram of Quidditch fields on colored inks. He took out his wand, tapped the board, and the arrows began to wiggle over the diagram like caterpillars. And Wood launched into a speech about his new techniques. Fred Weasley's head drooped right onto Alicia Spinnett's shoulder, and he began to snore. The first board took nearly 20 minutes to explain, but there was another board under that, and the third one under that one. Harry sank into a stupor as Wood droned on and on. "So," said Wood at long last, jerking Harry from a wistful fantasy about what he could be eating for breakfast at this very moment up at the castle. "Is that clear? Any questions?" "I've got a question, Oliver," said George, who had woken with a start. "Why couldn't you have told us all this yesterday when we were awake?" Wood wasn't pleased. "Now, listen here, you lot," he said, glowering at them. "We should have won the Quidditch Cup last year. We're easily the best team, but unfortunately, the circumstances beyond our control." Harry shipped guiltily in his seat. He had been unconscious in the hospital wing in the final match of the previous year, meaning that Gryffindor had a player short and had suffered their worst defeat in 300 years. Wood took a moment to regain control of himself. Their last defeat was clearly still torturing him. "So this year, we train harder than before, okay? Let's go and put our new dares into practice," Wood shouted, seizing his broomstick and leading the way out to the lockers' room. Stiff-legged and still yawning, his team followed. They had been in the locker room so long that the sun was up completely now. Although remnants of mist hung over the grass in the stadium. As Harry walked onto the field, he saw Ron and Hermione sitting in the stands. "Aren't you finished yet?" called Ron indecorously. "Haven't even started," said Harry, looking jealously at the toast and marmalade Ron and Hermione had brought out of the great hall. "Wood's been teaching us new moves." He mounted his broomstick and kicked at the ground, soaring up into the air. The cool morning air whiffed his face, waking him far more actively than Moo's long talk.